Hello, this is Olive Hickmott. I'm a forensic health and learning coach, exploring why some people find learning so challenging. I have a very holistic view of learning differences. I feel so strongly about this because I was dyslexic for 50 years and probably ADHD too, and nobody told me the advantages of learning through mental imagery and how to calm my hyperactive neurodivergent brain. I'm a highly visual thinker and learner, and now enjoy the positives of my dyslexia and ADHD. So that is probably why I'm doing this talk today. It takes one to know one, and my neurodivergent skills have really helped me to understand other people. I've been working for 22 years with tens and thousands of exceptional children and adults, and seen remarkable changes when using mental imagery well, simply by helping them to learn in a way that isn't really mentioned in school. That's visually, and that's not visual teaching. When you say visual learning to school teachers, they think visual teaching because that's what they've been trained to do, teach visually. Multisensory teaching and learning is a given in UK schools, but visual learning is not in teacher training, so schools focus very little on visual learners and how to get the best of using these strengths. This is a brief introduction to successfully using mental imagery for literacy and ADHD. You can go on to use mental imagery for maths, foreign languages, and so much more. There's an excellent online course. Let me give you a little history of dyslexia. In the 1980s, there was at least 3 pieces of research showing the need for visualizing words in English. In the 2000s, neuroscience caught up and detected the word form area, WFA, where we store words, which is near the occipital lobe, that I will explain to you in a moment. Then we had the reading wars. Phonics won as students didn't have reliable mental images. Mental images are not created by just looking at a word. You have to know the detail of how to store it. Phonics doesn't work for all unless you have a perfectly phonetic language like Italian. English has a deep orthographic depth, which means there's a big gap between what we hear and what we write down on a piece of paper. In my experience, it's not one or the other, it's both. Phonics for new words, word recognition after 2 or 3 times you see a word. And during COVID-19, when more parents realized just how much their children were struggling, some of them developed ADHD symptoms as well because of the increased stress. So meet my friend Freddy with ADHD. He's got all the usual symptoms: inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. And I guess you're familiar with most of these. Freddy is pretty typical. He can't concentrate, he easily gets distracted, he can't persist or sustain focus on a task, appearing not to listen, disorganized, forgetful, multiple thoughts all at the same time, mind wandering, drifting off when not truly engaged. But he has hyper focus and drive for what he is enjoying. Impulsivity. He quite often acts before thinking, frequently in a restlessness, dislikes waiting, overactive, rushing into things without thinking ahead. Hyperactivity. Fidgeting, squirming, swaying, minor or major movements, always on the go. And then, of course, he may have some other ones like drowsy and poor sleeper. Irritability may lead to a diagnosis of an oppositional defiant disorder and low self-esteem. The empowering learning approach is to work with the student's strengths and to learn from them about their experiences and help them keep up with their own mental images. So the neurodiversity view is that ADHD and dyslexia represents a brain difference, which, thank goodness, actually getting around to that, maybe even just a different way of using your brain. So rather than being a disorder, so now we can start really looking at the benefits of ADHD: curiosity, dynamic, imaginative, adept at switching tasks. Benefits of dyslexia, even more, seeing different perspectives, being able to convert 2D representation into 3D, high-speed abilities to make connections between different facts, picture thinking, and a mind's eye that can run really fast videos. But this might not fit into the everyday demands of the modern classroom. The student has a unique learning style that school is not meeting. We need to enable students to develop their own natural, innate learning abilities. So what's all this lot got in common? Great mental images. Yep, great mental images is the fundamental of this. At 6 weeks old, we can recognise our own parents and normally smile at them. According to a longitudinal survey done by NASA, 98% of 4-year-olds are creative geniuses, and only 2% of adults are. So being a creative genius is a natural strength for young people. So what's happening to this? So what's happening here? Why are they losing their creativity? We checked out with some of our reception year classes and it's exactly the same. They're really talented, creative people when they're really young. And the late, great Sir Ken Robinson was author of 2 wonderful books about creativity. One was called The Creative School, and the other one was called Do Schools Kill Creativity? And I followed Ken Robinson for many years before he's passed, and he was very concerned about creativity being lost in school. And why is it lost in school? Because we don't talk about it. So I just want to give you a quote of his. Imagination is the source of every form of human achievement, and it's the one thing that I believe we are systematically jeopardizing in the way we educate our children and ourselves. There was another piece of research done by Goldsmiths College in London, which is, they have an art foundation course there, and 75% of their 360 pupils in their art foundation course were dyslexic. So you can see this huge correlation between visualizing skills, internal visual skills, and dyslexia. And then, of course, there's all the sportsmen and the sportswomen. How do they do some of their sports? They visualize success. They also visualize every part of a race or every part of a pole vault. And for example, they visualize the ball going in the back of the net before they kick it. In soccer, it's interesting that the only group of people that I know of who are being taught to visualize are elite sportsmen and women. So how many dyslexics and ADHDers do you know who are highly creative and imaginative? Great problem solvers, designers, craftsmen, architects. They've got brilliant intuition. They're inventors, software engineers, entrepreneurs, artists, being able to paint from memory. Those people that can step back and see the bigger picture. And those are the big topics. We've got minor topics as well. Dressmaking, sewing, gardening, copying expert, seeing patterns and making connections, using their intuition to connect the dots, and basically thinking differently. ADHDers can do all this lot at lightning speed. So you need to be able to look after your mental imagery and keep them under control. I have many of these skills and I find them completely invaluable. People know dyslexics and ADHDers are highly visual, but they haven't learned how to teach visually so that they can learn visually. People know dyslexics and ADHDers are highly visual, but they haven't learned how to enable them to learn visually. Empowering learning is unique here, having worked out the exact details for success. How are they doing some of the things on the left-hand side that they're doing? They're doing it through their great mental imagery. And some people talk about this as being their superpowers, which I don't particularly like because I think everybody can do this. if they look after their creativity in school. And there's companies like GCHQ, EY, Facebook, who are positively encouraging dyslexics and neurodivergent students now. So if we don't recognise mental imagery symptoms, what happens? This is the secret that nobody's telling you. You have poor literacy, dyslexia and dysgraphia if you've got no pictures of letters and words. Dyslexics have not progressed from phonics to developing the skill to picture words needed for word recognition. If they've got poor numeracy or dyscalculia, they're probably not picturing numbers. Those with ADHD have mental images that run at a high-speed sequence, causing several distractions, which might be great for the individual, but not great in the classroom. Those on the autistic spectrum can withdraw into themselves, as they seem to be drowning in mental images without any control at all. Now here's the thing. People often talk about stress with dyslexia, etc. I think it's the other way around. Stress causes dyslexia for creative children who are trying their best, and I can cite hundreds and thousands of clients and the difference home education can make when the pressure is off and they learn according to their strengths. So let's back up a moment. What do we need mental imagery for? How do we naturally remember stuff? How do you remember your parents? It's a big thing when you come out of school as a 4-year-old that you recognise your own parents. How do you recognise your favourite toys? How do you get to learn to walk? By copying people. Do you recognise your own house? What about your past memories of holidays, Christmas, friends and family? These are all using mental imagery. And these are the simple things that we all take for granted. And we don't expect to have to teach anybody else about mental imagery. And when you get to school, there's lots of stuff to remember. There's literacy, letters, words, reading, spelling, numeracy, numbers, times tables, equations, mental arithmetic. Then there's finding your way around a new school, which is definitely a visual skill. How to remember what you read, recognising your friends, concentration. Subjects such as biology, geography, design and art all need visual skills. And then, of course, there's sports that I mentioned earlier. So where on earth are we today? We still have 10% of the population with dyslexia and or ADHD. The statistics on ADHD seem very odd, that in the UK we seem to have 3% ADHD, but we do have a very slow process for diagnosis, whereas in the US we have on average 9.4% ADHD when you average up all the statistics in the age range 2 to 17. We have thousands of children worldwide who have failed the phonics route. We know they're highly visual spatial. We keep pressing the phonics auditory button even louder. So no schools are mentioning the word form area, which is vital for fluent reading and spelling in any language. There's no help in school for those with exceptional mental imagery. And these students are exhausted, traumatised by the age of 10, with no learning strategy that matches their natural visual strengths. And just to give you a bit of neuroscience or the scientific research on this, just for those people who like science, this is somebody's brain, and that's their neck, and that's their eye over there. The occipital lobe is just above the dent in the back of your neck, and it's where you keep all your pictures. So whether you're picturing an elephant or a tiger or your house or whatever, or your mum or your dad, all the pictures hang out in your occipital lobe. That starts to be functioning when you're only 6 weeks old. You start to learn the meaning of words, so you start to recognise your own name quite soon during the first year. You then start to being able to pronounce words, which is even better. Then you can move on to articulating whole sentences. Now, reading comes along. When we read something, it goes into the frontal lobe of our brain and moves up here. These two have a bit of a discussion about it breaking it down into syllables or breaking it down into phonics. And finally, they come up with how the words sound. Now, of course, in the English language, not everything sounds like it's written, but you get corrected because you haven't got it quite right. You therefore will probably remember it for the next time. But the important thing is that this word now moves down into the word form area, which is that little Q star, so that the next time you see it, you won't have to go through this process again. You can just recognize it. And it's what I call on the express pathway. You see the word, and within a few microseconds, you can recognize the word. So what can you do to help? Are you prepared to offer a life belt to some of these children who have just never learned how to, the basic skill of how to do literacy, numeracy and concentration and so much more? I believe it's a child's right to know about the power of visual learning and be helped to learn in a way that works best for their highly visual skills. Multisensory teaching and learning is a given in education. Every child is different, and schools teach them as if they're all the same. There are thousands of highly talented children who struggle in school for no fault of their own. I've been teaching parents and their kids these simple skills for 22 years, developing their visual skills to enhance either school or home education. We need to bring about a change here so that visual gets back on the agenda. And I found this quote recently that I'd like to give you. If you're going to bring about change, you absolutely have to become okay with not being liked. No matter how loving and kind you are, you will never please your way into collective acceptance. You could be a whole ray of sunshine and people will still hate you because you're not the rain that they're used to. So be okay with shining regardless. To do a good job of teaching mental imagery, you need to understand why. So why is all about it's a natural way of creative young people to learn, using images for letters, numbers, comprehension, etc. And it's essential for spelling in a non-phonetic language like English. You need to make friends with your mental images so you've got them under control, that you are relaxed and grounded when you're looking at them so they're not running around all over the place. You need to learn how to picture words, adding new words for spelling and reading. You can teach it at any age and it's really, really quick. The younger the better. And it's fast, fun and effective. We typically spend 3 coaching sessions over a period of 6 weeks while the student practices in between. And the coaching sessions will probably only last an hour. We can do it with groups of people, we can do it with whole classes. The key thing is that people don't know that they're meant to be visualizing words. The amount of children that have turned around to me when I've taught them how to do this and gone, oh, I can do that. I didn't know I was meant to be doing that. And their parents and their teachers were probably doing it already. So here's a little note of my resources. That's where my website is. There's lots of mini videos that I did during lockdown on my YouTube channel. So do take a look at those. They're all there for free just to help you. And there is my blog with all sorts of useful stuff on it. And you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And there's my email address. And those are the 3 books I've published so far. And the latest one is The Elephants in the Classroom. That doesn't mean you've got people jumping around like elephants. It means it's a pun on the elephant in the room. In other words, everybody knows about mental imagery, but nobody's doing anything about teaching it. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. I do look forward to hearing from you again.